I've been crawling through some edits. I figure I'll do a rewrite. Well, so the rewrite I'm doing now is mostly just getting everything in order. Like I have a lot of material that just needs to be like ordered correctly, and I kind of know what the order is. And then what I'll need to do is take it to like a developmental editor, get a sense for how to make it a little bit stronger, and then I'll do like the really thorough line by line rewrite. So
awesome.
So
Sounds
if
like
life permits, yeah. So maybe another year or so of work. Minimally. The way that things go, probably longer, but we'll see.
Well, good.
Anyway.
I'm glad you're making some really solid progress on that.
Thank you. I am very glad as well. Well, speaking of new life, let's talk about death and destruction.
All right, good segue.
Yes, jump into our book. What is this? Our 6th installment of this saga, this wonderful saga. The saga. The passage. Dun da da da. Welcome to
see the face.
Yes, I see the face. I've been seeing the face. It's a little bit of a creepy face. I can't unsee the creepy face. Thank you very much. It haunts my dreams. So
no problem.
Yes. Welcome to the Word and Journey podcast. Conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think. And some stories that are just for fun. We're busy people reading books in realistic increments. Follow along in the book and join in the conversation, or just sit back and enjoy. Our aim is to unpack the story and offer you things to ponder. Either way, thanks for being here. Dear listener, welcome back to the Word and Journey podcast. Conversations with friends about stories that shape us and make us think and slightly creep us out, and sometimes have lots to say embedded messages about the meaning of life. Such is our topic tonight. We are in The Passage by Justin Cronin. We are approaching the end. This section we read was high action, high action. Epic scenes, epic action. Yes, I've overused the word action, but there were some really cool moments of movement and characters and some triumphs and some tragedies. And we're going to talk about that, talk about family, talk about the inner life, talk about trauma and vampires.
And just as a reminder for anyone who actually is following along, we just read chapters 42 through 55, which were sections 7 and 8. That's where we are. We just finished those.
That is where we are. And don't be daunted if you're thinking of reading. Not all of those chapters are very long. Some are actually very short, which is nice, as I'm sometimes reading this very late at night. And it's nice to have kind of short segments. So
right. I think those two sections together were only about like 100 pages or something like that. So it wasn't too bad.
Right. And I'm going to make a motion, I think. So this is our second to last. Next time we'll just finish the book and take it from there. I think we should.
No, we have 2 more. We have 7 and 8. Or sections 9, 10, and then the end of the book, which is chapters 71 through 74.
We could do that.
We'll update it next week after you and I talk off air.
This one was a little tricky though, because I got to the end and I was like, I want to keep reading, but I also didn't want to get super far ahead. So I'm anticipating that sort of an ending and wanting to just binge it. So I think, to be merciful on the readers, we should probably allow them the option of binging it if they like. But anyway, we'll plot.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yes. So
we'll plot that plot out.
We'll plot the plot line.
Yes.
So
we'll let readers know and listeners.
Yeah. So what happens in this section? So where we left our heroes, our intrepid group, who was it? It was Peter and Alicia and Michael and Sarah and Caleb and Hollis and the girl from nowhere, Amy, and Masami, who was Theo's baby mama. And they are all leaving the colony, and you kind of get the impression like a lot of people at the colony, a lot of people at the colony died right before they left, either through mobs or through murders or through virals. And and you're kind of getting the impression like they're leaving just before all of the lights go out. So there's kind of this implication like everybody's going to die soon anyway. It's just that kind of story. And most of the narrative follows our favorite 8 people here. There's a couple quick peeks on a few other people from the colony, but you kind of get the sense that they ran into virals or they died on their way out pretty soon anyway. I think that wasn't completely confirmed. I suppose there's always room for a surprise appearance by an nemesis, but all that to say, a lot of people were dying. So we see our 8. They're headed out. Their goal is to get from the 29 Palms area to Colorado Springs some way. They don't know how. And they make a stop in Las Vegas, find the city deserted. They take a brief layover in a big casino, have some rest, and there is a viral attack. Sarah's taken. We get worried. She gets returned all in one piece.
That was shocking, by the way.
That was a little shocking. Kind of shocking. It was the kind of shock you'd expect in this sort of story. And it was weird because one of the narrative devices is the author's incorporating the book of Sarah's journal, and we've only had like one entry before she's taken, so you kind of get a sense for she's probably not dead. She's only written a little bit in her journal, so there's a little bit of that foreshadowing, which is clever. And then in the process of escaping the virals and blowing up the building, they run into some other walkers or some other people, which is remarkable because there's not really many people left in the world. And these other people usher them to a place called the Haven, and the Haven is where all of the action starts taking place. And
I would say there's a considerable amount of action that night when they found him too, in Las Vegas.
There was indeed.
That was a lot that happened in that 20 pages. From the moment that Sarah was taken to the moment that, from Michael's point of view, he passes out in the hot truck and wakes up a little bit later. All of that packed full of action. And then I feel like just compounded once they got to the Haven after that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the Haven, aptly named, it's this place where there's a lot of people living and there's not any viral attacks, and they don't have the same reliance on lights. They just are left there, and that's a mystery. Why are the virals not touching them? I think we get an answer. Cattle. They do. Yes. They right away get a weird vibe from the place, like all of them do. The people are kind of forced happy to see them. I'm trying to think if there was a corollary scene in Lost where there's just like this like creepy welcome. There might have been.
Well, yeah, in Other 10.
Yeah.
There was definitely that creepy vibe. Like with Juliet and stuff. Well, I guess they were happy to see her because they knew she was coming to help.
Right. Anyway.
But yeah, there was moments.
Yeah, but they quickly realize it's this weird community. There's like no little boys. There seems like there's not a lot of men either. All of the women are pregnant, and they just have this like kind of like fake happy smile all of the time. They're told that they're not prisoners, but not really given any information either. And like you kind of get the sense they weren't ever actually like true prisoners completely. Who was the guy? The main host. He seemed pretty genuinely remorseful about having to be deceptive with them. But
yeah.
But the way that this works out, they pretty quickly figure out that part of the reason that this place is the Haven and it's untouched by the virals is that it's basically Babcock's palace. Babcock, again, he is the first of 12 of the main virals, the original 12, and we come to discover as he has grown, as he's ascended to a place of extreme prominence within the viral community, he has learned how to control people. He feeds his dream into their heads. He beckons them, he summons them, and he also apparently can commune and control all of the virals that he has made, which at this point is hundreds of thousands. They're called the many. And so there's this odd balance where he keeps his many away from the Haven in exchange for the people at the Haven on a regular interval giving him human sacrifice, basically. And so,
four cattle and 2 human.
So our friends arrive there just in time for the season sacrifice, and in there also we discover, spoiler alert, so Theo, who was taken, and last we saw him he was taken and he missed his curfew, he's alive. He's been a prisoner here and he's been going through his own psychological torture, and so he's one of the sacrificed people, except that he is not sacrificed. He's rescued. Amy has a lot to do with that.
Well, one of the things I was going to say was that one of the ways that Babcock builds his army is to, like you said, infiltrate the dreams. And whoever he does that with, that person has to, in the dream, kill who is actually his mother. So kind of recreate the actual happening that put him in prison and this program to begin with. And so they have to go through with that murder, stabbing the woman, in order to become one with the many. And Theo kept refusing, trying to keep himself awake. So he was captive, and he would just go, like you just said, had to go through torture pretty much of staying awake, not succumbing to either the murderous tone of his dreams and Babcock's voice, and also not succumbing to sleep too long to get into that. So he'd force himself awake, and then he would talk to who we would find out, I think, is Jude on the other side of the door. Likely, he never actually specifically said that, but who would just mock him and say all these things to him, and yeah. So that was something that was interesting to me, was that they would have to all go through with that in order for him to take over.
That was very interesting. The dream moment seemed to function as the initiation or the induction moment of sorts. Their baptism by depravity. You do the thing, you kill Babcock's mother in the dream, and you're one of his. So that's his Kool-Aid, his Pleasure Island, and Theo manages not to do it. So I would like to come back to that point as a discussion theme in a little bit, but that was exciting.
Let's do it.
Yes. And then from there, yes. So there's this fun battle scene in the arena. And the really cool image was Babcock, who you kind of get the sense he's just developed into this like monstrosity, like Apollyon-esque demon of the night. And Amy's this like tiny little frail girl, but he can't control her, and she has a lot of influence over him, and they sort of become counterparts to each other in a way. And you get into, there's some of the text that's from Babcock's perspective, it's in his head, and his self-concept is he is first of the 12. So there's the 12, there's 0, and then there's the other, who is Amy, and they all have a very special rank and communion within the viral community. Who are then the many, and Babcock has control of his many, but the presence of the other, of Amy, disrupts all of that, because she's the anomaly. She's as you remember from the very beginning, she received the same viral treatment, but she got like the very last, very refined version of it, and so did not become like the virals, but still became.
And I don't know if it was a full treatment either. Like, I don't know if she got the completed one. So that might have been part of it too.
Yeah. Mysteries. So
yeah, I really like that section. If I may just read a small section in that, like 4 sentences, when you're talking about Babcock and Amy. This is Babcock's inner monologue. It's, and the many, his children, His great and fearful company heard her also. He sensed her pull upon them, a force of great power drawing them away. Like the helpless love he had felt so long ago when he was just a boy, watching the red-hot tip burning against his flesh. Who am I? They asked her. Who am I? She made them want to remember. She made them want to die. She was close now, very close.
Yeah. Really, really well written. And the way that these characters are arrayed against each other is really, really brilliant. The contrast of something so huge and so powerful, so menacing, again, something that would seemingly be so frail and so tiny, and yet the frail and the tiny ends up actually being quite a bit stronger. And I think you see this pattern a lot in a lot of literature. Another recent example is the idea of like Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, and Voldemort, for all his power, like he ends up ultimately being defeated by this really simple, gentle thing. The love of Harry's mother is the force that he can't overcome, and that ends up completely defeating him. So
you want to hear something that's going to disappoint you and probably all of our listeners?
Sure, why not?
I've only read one Harry Potter book.
Oh, well, I guess that makes you special, doesn't it? Which one did you read?
I read just the first one.
Okay, yeah.
That's it.
That's actually the only one.
Go ahead. I was actually read to us in 8th grade, part of our core class.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's it.
Interesting, yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. Book 1 was actually the only book that I did not read, at least in its fullness. I think I started... I forget why I skipped book 1, but I started reading them in earnest at book 2, and then followed.
Interesting. So between the two of us, we've read the whole series.
Yes, we did it. Yeah, Harry Potter seemed like it occupied this really special space in society, especially in in the church, because it seemed like there was a way to, if you were a person who read the evil Harry Potter books, like there was like a coolness to that. Or if you're one of those people who are like, oh, I don't read Harry Potter, like you got to be cool in a different way. So it seemed like it appealed to everybody, one way or the other.
Yeah, I just never really got around to it. I wasn't ever really huge into wizards and stuff, so like spells and all that. But it wasn't really because I wasn't allowed to or anything, or I just didn't really dive into it. I wasn't swayed by the popular swell of cultural fascination.
There was quite the cultural fascination, I do recall, and then the movies, and then it was fun.
So they are all on HBO Max, so I might go through them. Maybe Melissa and I will go through the whole series.
Have you not seen the movies either?
No.
Oh, ooh. I've seen epics that you haven't seen. Wow, that's exciting. I could induct you. It would be payback. This would be my payback for Lost. So
okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, no, I haven't seen any of them.
Okay, that's good.
By the way, the gentleman you were trying to remember is Olsen.
Olsen, that's right. Yes. So
that's the guy in the Haven.
That's the guy in the Haven. Yes. So Olsen, his daughter Mira, the guy Jude, who is apparently Babcock's favorite, Babcock's pet. He in the dream, he killed Babcock's mother like no one had killed her before, and thus he won brownie points and was sort of a boss person and creepy. So the last adventure, as they get out, the timing was really nice. So they're rescuing Theo from the arena scene, just as Michael, a couple of them took him to where they have a train, one of the original armored trains from 100 years ago, and he's the genius who's able to fix it up. And then they're gonna race away, which apparently a lot of the people in the Haven wanted to escape, and we're kind of like cognizant of what was going on, and so we're all like jumping on the train to try to get out. In the end, like nobody makes it except our 8 and Olsen, and there's a lot of sadness there. But again, there's some fun imagery of the train like racing away from like this horde of Varls. At one point, it's like most of our heroes in the train, but Alicia and Sarah are racing alongside it in a Hummer, and that's just a fun image. Takes me back to Back to the Future, chasing trains in the DeLorean and all of that fun stuff. Good times.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. So they mostly all make it alive. Poor Caleb, rest his soul. He takes a bullet
Dude, that
for
sucked.
everybody. Yeah. I mean, it was
I
a
mean,
really
okay, now that one was another shocking moment, right? When all of a sudden Jude's there, where he had gotten a shotgun blast to the side of the head,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I was a little surprised that it was him, but also
Same.
like kind of not surprised because so writing note, this author is done really well at setting the expectation that odd things will happen or that shocking things will happen. And so when something happens like, oh, Jude who got shot in the head, he's not actually dead, it kind of just fits with the tone of the story. We expect absurdly awful things to happen.
Yeah,
So
but it also introduces new rules to the world that will help us, I think, because you have every so often you're learning more about the virals, about what they're capable of, about the turning, and then sometimes they take people and they don't turn them, right? Now in this one, you have Olsen talking about Jude saying, "Oh, he was familiar." And they're like, "What are you talking about familiar? What do I mean?" It's like, well, it means you can be one of them without being one of them. So there's this, human appearance, um, but maybe fully viral interior of a person, I mean, giving himself or herself over completely to the viral's intentions and motives and plans and all that stuff,
yeah.
but appearing human.
Mm-hmm. That's a really now that you put it that way, that becomes this really brilliant metaphor for like theosis and sanctification and like what in some Orthodox circles we like casually call like demonosis, and it's the sense of um like being really careful, really conscious of who is mastering you. Like we read the Gospels, the Lord Jesus says like no one can serve two masters. Uh, Implication like you're only ever serving one, you're only ever on a trajectory toward greater Christ likeness or away from that and becoming like any of these other forces, most of which are not out for your good. And there is a
Mm.
sense where in our inner world, a spiritual developmental arc is to grow in greater mastery over your passions, which
Mm.
means having an active relationship, an active mastery, an active hierarchy where where you're in charge. Not that things like hunger or sex or anger or like ambition are inherently evil in and of themselves, but when they master you, when they become the thing, when they get really imbalanced, when they blend with you, they they corrupt you, or they start transforming you into like the image of that thing. And so
Mm.
this so that gets depicted here in this fun way of here's these folks who like let someone like Jude, he yields to the Babcock and to the dream of the Babcock's mother and essentially becomes a little mini Babcock, different than different than someone like Theo who fights and fights and fights against that and ultimately is not mastered by the Babcock. And uh there's in this particular vignette it's an internal struggle, which is a true thing for a lot of us anyway. Um, well, mostly in our real lives, real world, any sort of spiritual growth transformation will have a behavioral component to it because we have to practice it. We have to act in ways, live in certain ways, day by day, moment by moment. But a lot of that is really connected to the inner life and what the thoughts that we entertain, the dreams, the fantasies that we entertain. So yes. So with Yoda is actually really, really powerful where he's stripped of everything except his own mind, his own inner life. So that's what he has to work with, and that's what he fights for. That's his battlefield, and he doesn't abandon it. He's very active in his mind. He's got very clear intention, very clear goal, and that's it seems like a large part of why he's able to resist. And so then he resists, he doesn't become a viral, and we cheer for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All well said, man. All well said. I appreciate you sharing all that. I'm kind of, yeah, just going through and processing all that. But that is a scene that it's actually pretty neat because excuse me, it's um, it's interesting with the Theo and Peter characters because you have Peter who his whole life he thought that Theo was supposed to take care of him, right? And that he was the younger brother living in the shadow. It was older brother who would, having all these promotion, all these accolades and this respect of everybody and just super able and capable of so much. And even from his mom, you know, basically breathing her last, saying, um, you need to take care of him. He assumed that she thought he was Theo, but ultimately turns out that he's seeing it, her message to him, and even Auntie shined light on it, is to save Theo, to take care of his brother, and to more or less get vaulted into this leadership position where he becomes the caretaker. He becomes the, I guess, quote unquote, big brother, right, to look after his bro in need. And I thought that was really neat because you still see the strength of Theo here, right? It's not like he's a helpless man, and it's not like he doesn't have the inner strength and emotional fortitude, but not to resist the urges of Babcock. But at the same time, he is in a vulnerable spot, and he was just about to get massacred by the beast, Babcock, until Peter stepped in. So I just like that kind of dichotomy of seeing the inner workings of Theo when he's a strong man, as well as seeing all these machinations of Peter and seeing how strong he's becoming as a leader, as a confidant, as a trusted individual to carry this troop of 8 forward, well, 7 now. But like, I thought that was a really kind of putting those side by side. It's a really neat thing to look at.
I agree. There's something really neat about how that's written and watching the contrast, which, I mean, brothers or sisters, they make a great vehicle for contrasting different character traits. I mean, that goes back to like Cain and Abel. So that's always a winner. What I love about this too is Peter and Theo together, they show different types of strength. Peter stepping into more of like an assertive, confident leadership. He's the one like down in the ring.
Yep.
He's got the guns. He's got the force. In this particular story, Theo's strength is more of an internal one, which is really great. It's really great to see strengths other than who can throw the strongest punch, who's got the biggest gun. In this case, it's like who's got the most mental fortitude, which is really great. And you see that in some of the women characters too. Someone like Alicia is fun to watch. She's the little ninja, and she's really active, forceful in that way. But you see in someone like Sarah, who I mean, she learns how to shoot guns, and then that's cool. But her strength, I mean, she's a healer, and her strength is being able to heal, to bandage up, and to hold people together in that sort of way. Masami's strength is a really different one. I would say hers is more of like an inner journey also. She's not a super weapons master, not a super mechanic, not a super healer. She's creating a life, and so her journey is to hold the resolve, hold that hope that yes, we will find Theo again, we will get through, nobody's going to take my baby. That takes a lot of strength also.
Yeah, I think there is something to that though, because Masami was really good with weapons before. Remember, she was on the watch. And so she did have that, and she was always, not always, but oftentimes would go on the little, whatever they call it, expeditions to the check stuff out. But now she can't, right? And they won't even let her. And so then it becomes a kind of a new season of utilizing different strengths in her, the ones that you just mentioned. But that's different because she wants to be active, right? She wants to, especially, I mean, I think even before she left the colony, she was like, oh, I would go after them if I could, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like showing her how she has to adapt, showing us how she has to walk in a new kind of strength. So I think that's really neat how she's able to, adjust accordingly, and also really focus in on the hope of seeing Theo again. And actually, each person kind of has their own version of hope, I think, in this. Sarah even wrote about it too in her journal. Like, it's different being afraid when there's hope, when there's the hope that it'll amount to something. I really like that quote from her journal. So, yeah, Masami has all these things that she's dealing with in terms of changes she has to adapt to and adjust to. So, I like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of strength that goes into navigating changes, or there's a way that changes evoke something. What am I trying to say? Change is hard, and we lose something in every change, and so there is a strength in like facing up to that loss, and finding the other side, finding a way to thrive without it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, sir. So I know that one of the things that we wanted to chat about was this idea of what'd you call it? Multi-generational trauma, and also the big question marks of family and what is family, all that stuff. So what are some things that kind of caught your attention in regards to those different large topics?
I'm not completely stalling for time, even though I'm stalling for time. So the character of Babcock, we get in chapter 51, we get dropped into the mind of the monster. And this section opens up in this way. He was Babcock, and he was forever. He was one of 12, and also the other, the one above and behind the zero. He was a knight of knights, and he had been Babcock before he became what he was. Before the great hunger that was like time itself inside him, a current in the blood, endless and needful, infinite and without border, a dark wing spreading over the world. He was made of many, 1,000,000,000 scattered over the night like the stars. He was one of 12, and also the other, the zero. But his children were within him also, the ones that carried the seed of his blood. One seed of 12, they moved as he moved, they thought as he thought. In their minds was an empty space of forgetting in which he lay, each to a one, saying, "You will not die. You are part of me as I am part of you. You will drink the blood of the world and fill me up." Anyway, it's fun. It's fun reading. What is really striking about this is in the mind of Babcock, as he's very much now consumed with being the Babcock, being the first of 12, being the head of the many, being opposed to the Amy other. There he comes back to this memory of his mother, the fat lady, burning his hands with a cigarette and slapping him and saying, "Don't you cry now. You be a man. You cry and I'll give you something to cry about. So much the worse for you, Giles Babcock." And there's another point where she's taunting him, tearing into him like the knife he took from the drawer that day as she sat at the table in the kitchen of the little house in the place called Desert Wells, talking and laughing and laughing and talking and eating her mouthfuls of smoke. And she says of him, "The boy isn't just dumb. I tell you, he's been struck dumb." And so his mother is abusive. His mother is using. She's mean to him. She burns him. She slaps him. She derides him, and it's this really horrible arrangement for him. And who knows where Dad was? And she taunts him and antagonizes him apparently over years, and so finally he kills her. That's a significant shaping moment for him. He finds a knife, he stabs her, and that's super formative for him. I guess that's why he was in jail. And what is striking to me is how that is a memory that survived his transformation. That is a memory that survived 100 years and now has infiltrated the many. All who come to Babcock carry this memory, carry this dream. And all of our heroes, as they come into Babcock's circle and his sphere, they all now have the same dream, and they all have to interface with the same thing and have to live through his same horrific moment, this trauma where his internal protective burden system is so burdened that it reacts in this extremely extreme way where he kills his mother. And is this Babcock's fault? Yeah, who's to blame here? Yes, I mean, Babcock as an individual, of course, is responsible for his own choices, as everyone is. But what I think is really important to remember is how we all live in a context. We are very much the product of our ancestors and our inheritance. And there's a lot of different language that people use for this. We can talk about generational inheritance, generational trauma, the genetic payload, the epigenetic inheritance. But we understand this now, that things transmit, burdens transmit, anxiety, depression, traumas, and strengths, and character attributes, and healing and recovery, and spirituality. All of those also transmit. But a lot of attachment and trauma science is now recognizing what, like the Bible talks about when it talks about the sins of the fathers being visited upon, like the third and the fourth generation, through like epigenetics. We know that, yeah, we inherit the burdens of our parents and our grandparents and everything. And so in this case, the Babcock's inheritance was one of a lot of pain and a lot of abuse and a lot of anger and a lot of hatred. And that then became his legacy. He was not able to heal from that or release that burden or receive any love or support. And so that transformed him even before the viral stuff transformed him. And so that was how he transformed others. And I think it's really powerful because he's in such stark contrast to Amy, who, in contrast, her mother, chaotic though she was, really loved her daughter and worked really hard to keep her safe and to keep her alive and to love her and to feed her and do really well with her. And then Amy also benefits from being with Wolgast, and Sister Lacey and Doyle, and these people who, again, are not perfect, but they care, they're present, they're moving toward her with a compassion. And so her inheritance is one of love and presence and compassion. And again, then that's transforming her even before the viral stuff. And so she becomes this entirely different presence, this entirely different being with an entirely different impact and an inheritance. So I would say I take this as a really wonderful depiction of intergenerational trauma and how far reaching it actually is. Like when we're mean to the people, when we're harsh to the people in our lives, the younger people, especially the kids, like we have no idea just how far reaching that is. And so as a dad, now a dad of 4, I feel very sobered by that and take that as this really disturbing reminder of like just how much power I have. And obviously there's like the motivation, the excitement to do something good with that and to be responsible with that. But yes, it is a perilous quest, this fatherhood thing. So pray for me out there.
Supremely important and worth it. I mean, you're just talking about Babcock's mother. Well, where was Babcock's father? Yeah, his mother was terrible to him, but let's just hypothetically say that a dad was was in the picture. Where was he? Why wasn't he involved? Why was he leaving his son to the clutches of this terrible woman that would do things to him which would incite him into enough anger to become murderous, and commit matricide? Like that's to me. I mean, yeah, like I said, yes, his mother was terrible to him, but to me, almost an as egregious sin against Babcock was the absent yeah, absentness of his father. Fatherlessness is horrible, horrible, horrible to every single society it touches. Every single home, neighborhood, city, state, nation. Fatherlessness is an epidemic, and it transcends the only a home without a dad is it doesn't just stay in isolation. It touches every part of society and generations to come after that particular household without a dad too. So that to me is what stuck out in all of that is where was his dad and why wasn't he there and why did he abandon his wife and kid? Um, Absolutely terrible. And so, I mean, yeah, I can go on about that, but let's just
Yeah.
keep it there.
Yeah, it's a thing though, to deprive a kid of even one parent is really, really awful,
Hmm.
um, and the effects are super far-reaching, and again, I mean, we know this. We know this from, I mean, a lot of psychology talks about this. A lot of people talk about this. Here's a story that's kind of depicting this in a really dramatic way. But yeah, yeah. I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately, and it comes up a lot with the guys that I work with as we're doing recovery work, and they're learning how to be sober, be involved in the families, and um, a lot of them are realizing just what their inheritance is, and it's not always very great. It's like, you know, toxic and abusive stuff, or just like an absence of stuff, like a lot of emotional neglect. Emotional neglect, I think it's an underrated, underappreciated phenomenon where you have parents, dads who are physically present and not actually like abusive. The kids are fed and clothed, but there's no emotional engagement. The kids aren't taught how to be in their inner worlds. They're not taught how to have emotion. Their emotions are not welcome. Their inner lives are not given any credence or any priority. And so that part of them never develops. And so a lot of these people grow up from these air quotes like good families with no language for their inner world, and there's just this huge void that they're carrying around, and they a lot of times don't feel permission to identify that as a problem because it's not, you know, again, air quotes, trauma. um, but they missed out. They had something really precious stolen from them by parents who would not engage with them emotionally. And a lot of them, yeah, there's an emotional security and attachment and the comfort that they needed from their parents, and lacking that, they turn to drugs or alcohol or acting out sexually or eating disorders or all of these other things. Um, you know, nobody ever got hit, but they still ended up falling into these same addictive spirals.
Yep. Yep. And it's repetitive, and it's ongoing, and it gets passed down, passed down, passed down. And it's interesting because you talked about Amy receiving love from Jeanette, her mother, and from Lacey, and from Walgast, like you, Stephen Doyle, to a certain extent. And you notice Amy, before she was the girl from nowhere, before the treatments and the program and everything, she was still special. Like you could, Walgast said there was a certain quality about her, right? There was a certain maturity in her eyes. She had this way about her and connecting with people, and like, so there was something in there innate before she went through the viral procedures, right? The government program. So there's something in there before that. And it, yeah, may very well have been, the way that Jeanette loved on her for the first, 6 years of her life. And obviously she had her own issues and stuff, and Amy might have had to deal with the feelings of abandonment, when realizing that her mom had dropped her off at the convent. So there's those things at play here, but you're right. She did receive a lot of love, and she also had that innate, I don't know, almost pristine quality of I don't know what it was exactly. There was purity, there was a wisdom, there was a maturity, even in a young age, that people could observe early on. So that was interesting to me too.
Yeah. You had mentioned family as a topic that really stood out to you. I would love to hear
Yeah,
more of your thoughts on that.
absolutely. Well, it's when it I really started not listening, reading closely when it got to Sarah's journal entry, and one of the things that I really liked was when she wrote the following. She goes, "What everybody's thinking but not saying is that there's no real safety from here on out. The funny thing is, I don't mind so much. Not really. I hope we don't doubt. I hope we don't all die out here, of course, but I think I'd rather be here than anywhere else with these people. It's different being afraid when there's the hope that it will amount to something. I don't know what we'll find in Colorado if we ever get there. I'm not even sure it matters. All those years waiting for the army, and it turns out the army is us." I like that so much, but the key thing there was, like, I wouldn't wanna be anywhere else. I wanna be here with these people, even though it's crazy, like, I'm away from my home, like, colony I grew up in, like, the comforts, or, like, quote, unquote, "comforts," the familiarity, everything like that, but she's like, "No, I wanna be here with these people." And she also wrote earlier in the journal, like, "I think without realizing it, we've become a family here." And that to me was just so striking and so beautiful because you kinda see it early on with Walgast and Amy in the relationship that they build, very similar to a father-daughter bond. And you see Walgast look after her, and they spend all that time up in the cabin, like, he saves her life and all that stuff. And then you see it here kind of on a bigger scale where all of these people did come from the colony, and then add Amy into it. But now they're actually acting as a family. Like, I don't think we even realized it, but we've become a family here. And of course, Sarah and Michael are related, and Peter and Theo are related, but Theo wasn't with them at this time when she wrote this. But I'm thinking, okay, well, then what makes family? Like, is it the surviving the intense moment in Vegas, and then another intense moment in the Haven? Was it surviving all those years in the colony together, that longer season? Is it just bloodline? Is it just Michael and Sarah? And then, hey, everyone else can kind of feel like family, but it's not totally family, or is it shared history? What makes a family? Is it spiritual connection? And so it just got me thinking about about that. And as we not even talking about really uh, the specific ties, the bonds in the book between them, but on a larger scale, why does she think, okay, we become a family, and how do we relate that to us? Like, when do we feel like we are part of a family, of a team, of a unit, right? A singular body of people. Um, and does it happen all of a sudden? Does it happen over time? Um, yeah, so those are kind of the thoughts, the questions I was ruminating on. Um, there are these different things that I could say, um, that I could bring up. I mean, you talk about military, right? Going to war together, brothers and sisters, um, dying like right next to you, going through training, boot camp, all the overseas missions, all these different things. I mean, there's military for sure. I mean, even sports teams, uh, you can really form a strong family feel on a sports team.
Mhm.
Um, season in and season out. And I know it's different on the professional level when people get traded and all that stuff, but high school teams, college teams, there's so many different ways you can feel like a family with someone, even if it's only for a season, right?
Mhm.
I remember feeling really, really, really close with uh, some friends of mine, some brothers of mine, in our senior year of high school on our football team. We went to state, we got second in state, and it was just a remarkable season full of all sorts of fun highlights and meaningful moments. So yeah, I felt really close to them um, in that season, and not just the football season, like in that year of school.
Mhm.
So then you have these moments right here where a bunch of crazy crap is happening, and you have to survive something, So I don't know. Where do you land on that? Or if not land, how do you process that question? What makes a family? Like, I know you have your wife and kids. I have my
Yeah,
wife and kid, but what makes a
yeah.
family beyond
What
that?
makes a family beyond? Yeah, this is a really good question. It's come up a lot for me as I've both been in the Orthodox Church now for a few years and still in living long distance from my parents and my brother for a lot more years, and I'm starting to find it helpful to uh, make use of like the different terms family versus relative. Um,
Hmm.
like there's a sense where my relatives live in Southern Oregon, Southern California, and are interscattered. There's a Bisamio diaspora everywhere. But there is a very real sense where my family is the parish at Annunciation in Milwaukee, Oregon, as a subunit of like all of the Orthodox Church. Um, but what makes a family? You know, a sports team is certainly a great example. I'm thinking of like uh, what some people describe in their 12-step group, their AA or NA group, or a little bit
Absolutely.
in some of the men's groups that I'm doing. There's a specific structure to that, so there's a little bit of a limit to how much that can happen. But there is a sense of there's a closeness here that is unparalleled among relatives most of the time. I love the language of chosen family for sure. But
Hmm.
boiling down the mechanics, what makes family? So certainly going through struggle together is going to be a bonding factor. Going through suffering together. There's the fellowship of the sufferings, which can kind of lead to trauma bonding. And so there's like the hyper family that can come out of that, and that's not always super healthy. But again, reflecting on my experience in coming into the Orthodox Church, there's a distinct entry point of baptism, and it's a sacrament that has the function of like bringing you into the church. And after that, there is this life of the church, and it's that we have this shared focus, the shared point of focus. It's the Lord Jesus, it's the Eucharist, and we have these shared practices. We fast together, we labor together, we do prostrations together, we give alms together, and we do liturgy together. And I think ritual has a lot to do with family. You talked about sports teams a little bit. There's a way that shows up there a little bit. There's the ritual of like we show up at the games, we do the cheers, we paint our faces, we drink the beers, whatever. But there's this sense of like there's ritual, there's shared point of focus, there's shared value, um, and I think it happens in a little bit more meaningful way in the church where there's all of those things. We have our rituals, we have our shared values, shared point of focus, and this time together. We become family over years, doing this labor together and being and participating. And I think that's a really important key. We participate in each other's lives. We participate in this ritual together, and that is what unites us as family, as spiritual family, surely. Um, and that's just something that doesn't exist with relatives necessarily. It could, thankfully, for my immediate relations, my wife and kids, it does happen that way. And I hope that my sons will grow up in the church and we'll still all participate in that way together. But it does. It's a very different feel than like how I am with my relations. There's kind of like a different ritual there. Like we sing, we dance, we tell jokes, we talk about movies, and we eat a lot of food. And so there's that. There's a little bit of a ritual there, but it doesn't have the same binding power. So yeah, I'm gonna go with ritual and participation and struggle that make a family.
That's really good. I like that. I would add to it, I really like that. That's your definition. That's your area. I would say for me, I'd say trust and vulnerability, uh, with a capper of intentionality. I think there has to be vulnerability because when you are striving for intimate connection with people, To be vulnerable is to allow people in, to show them yourself, who you are, your limitations, being open to receiving both encouragement and challenges or constructive criticism, right? So the vulnerability piece is huge. Just like intimacy is like me, you see, and so it's allowing someone in, and trust is really big too because you have to trust people, not only to let them in, but you have to trust people with your stuff, and and trust breeds trust, I think. So there's that aspect of it too. Um, and of course, if you're not only leading alongside someone, or if you are trying to empower someone to rise up in their calling or their gifting or their abilities or whatever, there's that trust to entrust something to them to accomplish or to carry out as well. So there's that piece to it, and then intentionality is, I think, huge, and that intentionality has to be two-way for any relationship to flourish. I can be intentional telling blue in the face, and it might produce something, but if that's not met, if there's no reciprocity in terms of intentionality and meeting me, if not halfway, at least some part of the way, then it's just going to die out. It's going to fizzle out after a while.
I've been finding that to be the hardest part about adult relationships is that, like the trust, not too hard with the right people. And you're right,
Mhm.
trust begets trust, vulnerability begets vulnerability. There's an honesty that goes with that, and I don't know. I've experienced that as not too hard to achieve. The reciprocal intentionality, though, that's been hard. And I've
Yeah.
run into a lot of times where like I'm the one reaching out to people and I'm the one reaching out to people and I'm the one reaching out to people. And a lot of people just don't call me back. Or there's some people that only respond to me if I respond to them. So to my like three friends out there, Justin included, who will sometimes reach out to me first, I'm like, oh, praise the Lord, these people exist. I'm not the only one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, a big way to, like, see that, like, play out is small group. For me and Melissa, we've been group leaders for years and years. We've had now the same group, same core group for about 3 years coming up on, and, it's been really good. I would consider these folks family, you know what I mean? So this is kind of where that rubber meets the road with the definitions and the playing it out, see it play out, live, day to day sort of thing. And it's just interesting because we pray with each other, we sing with each other, we read the scriptures, we also have fun. We play games, we eat.
Mhm,
We do potluck every first Thursday of the month and like just
mhm,
have fun, but we all know that each one of us legitimately cares about the next. And we
mhm,
want to see the best in each other,
mhm,
hope for the best, pray for the best. And the guys get together every once in a while, the gals get together every once in a while.
mhm.
And it's just like as a group, all 12 of us, I just feel like it's just so beautiful. It's a really good
Yeah.
picture of, like, heavenly community. Not to say that we're a perfect community, I'm just saying, like, it's there in some form or another that really makes me grateful for it, and
Yeah.
when they can't be there, I miss them. I miss them like crazy, when they can't be there multiple weeks in a row because work is taking them out or something with family or trips or whatever, like, I really, really miss them.
Uh-huh.
And so it just goes to show that the power of community, the power of building family based on stage of life or belief system or just a desire to connect with other human beings on a regular basis. Those things go a long way.
Mhm. I'm gonna throw into that proximity doesn't equal connection. Um, like it's easy to be like in the same room with people. Here I'm thinking about people in the same room watching TV together. There's a physical closeness there. They might even have sex, but that's proximity. That's not intimacy. And
Hmm.
just being in the same room with people or in conversation doesn't guarantee there's going to be closeness. It's like you said, there has to be that intentionality, that opening up, that sharing of like the inner world that really brings them close. So,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good piece of wisdom there for sure.
yeah, I'm going to think other good wisdom would be to go to bed. sometime before midnight. So I think here's where we might draw this one to a close. But I appreciate you being here with me, dear Justin, and you, the listener, for following through this fun story with us as well. And
Theo's alive.
Theo's alive. Spoiler. So
Caleb's not. Spoiler.
Right. So very sad.
That was sad, though. That was sad.
It was a really beautiful death scene, though. It was like a really beautifully done death. So
I agree. Yeah. I'm just excited to see what's next. The next section is called The Last Expeditionary. So that sounds fun. So where do these 8 go? What do they do? I mean, it's 8 now because it was 8 before with Caleb, and we just swapped out Theo for him, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So they're the great 8. The late great 8. They don't have an 8.
So they're done with the engine, with the train engine. Ran out of gas. They can't do anything else, and now they got to figure out what's next. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do?
Yes.
So, the next.
I'm going to say one more section. I'll just finish the book, and I don't think it will be too hard. So.
Well, it'd be chapters 56 through 70. I think that'd be 150 pages of reading.
But a fast.
The thing I was thinking about was if we have a hard time keeping it under hour, just talking about 2 sections. If we do 2 sections plus an extra section and we have a wrap up summary discussion, I feel like that's way too much for one podcast. That's why I separated it into 2.
Okay. I'll see if I can restrain myself. But if I forget and I read the whole thing, then we'll just have read the whole thing. Because I'm enjoying it. You got me hooked on this story, and now
I told you you'd like it.
I
told you you'd like it. But there has to be some self-control.
So I can't stay up on that watching Lost. Okay.
No, not this time.
Yeah.
But no, just stop at page 737.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
733. Sorry. Stop at 733. And then we'll talk about it, and then we'll have one more after that.
Okay. We will. Yes, indeed.
All right.
So thank you, listener, for being here. Please do consider how you might support the show. Visit patreon.com/MosesBarnaby. Join our reading community. You can do that for as little as $2.50 a month. And the dollars help me have resources and new microphones and paying my sound editor and help my sanity, and will help me and my guests deliver other great and wonderful content, bring you many more better stories. That's really bad grammar. We will bring you more stories that are good if you support us in doing this. So please do that. Otherwise,
support this man. Support this. Come on.
Yes,
he can crank more out when guys.
I've got babies.
Some more
yes,
green in his
support
pocket.
Me. I've got babies to feed. Please support me. Like and rate and review the show and tell your friends, and I appreciate that. Anyway, good night. Great to see you.
Good night, all.
Sleep well.
See you next time.
Bye. Word and Journey is a podcast by Moses Barnaby. If you like what you hear, consider supporting the show with dollars, reviews, or shares, or all of the above. Word and Journey can be found on most major podcast platforms and on my author Patreon at patreon.com/MosesBarnaby. Moses Barnaby can be found at mosesbarnaby.com. Contact info for my most excellent co-hosts can be found in the liner notes. The podcast logo was designed by TJ Todd with additional development by Moses Barnaby. The theme music is by Aaron Esparza. This episode was mastered by Breakfast Puppies. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.